from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome, 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 live and national this Friday evening. Our phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ, and what an honor it is to be here. Today we're broadcasting from our affiliate in Washington, D.C., WMAL, for CPAC. I was in town for CPAC today. I'll be around again tomorrow. Great to catch up with some of our listeners that were at the event, and so many great people there. I saw Sebastian Gorka there, and Bianca Della Garza from Newsmax, and a whole bunch of the Newsmax people. Great time. I'm leaving a lot of people out. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer, I was just talking to him literally a few minutes ago and had to fly over here from National Harbor. Barely made it to the show on time, but exciting nonetheless, and I'll be filling you in on all that stuff as we move on. But something I want to get into is the news of the day. Man, a lot of stuff, right? Well, a lot of interesting things happening. El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th and 47th president of these United States, El Presidente Donald J. Trump. He roasted the governor of Maine today after there was some, I'm going to say, ambiguity over boys or girls in the opposite sex sports. Listen to this.
The NCAA has complied immediately, by the way. That's good. But I understand Maine. Is the Maine here, the governor of Maine? Huh?
Down here.
Are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good. I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor because I don't think you'll be in elected politics.
El Trompito. This is why America loves him, right? He's holding her feet to the fire, letting her know, and he says, this should be an easy one. I'll see you in court. It should be an easy one, right? They're going at it. And what's interesting here is Trump has a really good record of winning in court, at least from what I can tell. There's all these Doge lawsuits for slashing jobs, this and that. I just saw one today that came in. Court approves the proposal to fire all USAID staff. Trump is winning left and right. Why? Because he's got the law on his side. He's got everything on his side. So good for him. And very funny, I thought, that little back and forth with the governor of Maine. So anyway, that is, again, President Trump with the governor of Maine. I'm trying to find the governor of Maine's name, and I just can't find it. I thought it was going to be on my list here. It just says governor of Maine. Anyway, moving along. I want to talk about some other big news today because guess what? Yesterday, the big news, I was like, man, between Mitch McConnell retiring and Kash Patel getting confirmed, I didn't know which one made me happier. But today, Kash Patel was sworn in and he gave some remarks right after he raised his right hand and took that oath of office on the Constitution. And some of the things that he was talking about, I mean, he talked about a lot, and I'll probably repeat this audio a little bit later, but he talks about a lot of things, right? He talks about how he's living the American dream. He also talks about a staunch warning to the media because they seem to be the biggest critics out there. Listen to this.
I know the media's in here, and if you have a target, that target's right here. It's not the men and women at the FBI. You've written everything you possibly can about me that's fake, malicious, slanderous, and defamatory. Keep it coming, bring it on. But leave the men and women of the FBI out of it. They deserve better. And for those of you who think that there's going to be a two-tier system of justice, not with Attorney General Bondi. There's a singular system of justice for all Americans, and there will be accountability. And the reason that this mission is so important is simply the following. 100,000 people last year raped. 100,000 people died of CCP fentanyl overdose and heroin. 17,000 homicides. Violent crime is out of control. We cannot have a United States of America where that is acceptable, where someone dies every 30 minutes, where someone ODs every 7, where someone's raped every 6. That cannot be allowed to continue, and it will not be allowed to continue. Our national security mission is equally as important. Anyone that wishes to do harm to our way of life and our citizens here or abroad will face the full wrath of the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And if you seek to hide in any corner of this country or any corner of this planet, we will put on the world's largest manhunt, and we will find you, and we will decide your end state, not you. We will uphold the Constitution. We will uphold ourselves to the Constitution. The men and women at the FBI, I have your back because you have the backs of the American people.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is your new FBI Director, Kash Patel. I love it. Music to my ears. It's great to hear people that have zeal, people that are focused, people that are ready to go and have a commitment to America. I love it. I love it. I'm thrilled that we have the right people in the right places. So we're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to talk about a lot of things, right? Apparently there's a movie on Netflix that depicts, listen to this, it depicts an American president that is stricken with dementia. And this older gentleman eventually is replaced by an African-American vice president. Go figure. And then she becomes president in this Netflix series. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. I also want to talk about the Black Hawk. Today I was at the convention center in National Harbor, and I got to tell you, there is like an unobstructed view of where the Black Hawk and the American Airlines flight tragically collided. And throughout the day, there were several instances where planes were taking off or landing, and helicopters were also in the vicinity. Thankfully, everything went off without incident. So we're going to talk to a Black Hawk helicopter pilot this evening, and I'm really looking forward to that because, you know, in addition to what's going on with the DC stuff, they have their own war stories that they can bring to the table, which I think is always just fascinating to give you a bird's eye view of what's going on. Then we've got some conversation on taxes, right? Everybody's trying to get their taxes done or waiting for their tax return. And of course, all the news of the day is we're abolishing the IRS, or at least trying to, or zero out the tax rate. But with the 6,000 layoffs that were announced yesterday at the IRS, some people are concerned that things are going to be going on, and there's people out there taking advantage of the fact that there's so much talk about this that they're trying to scam people. So we're going to talk about tax scams and what you can do about those things. And a couple of folks that were at CPAC will be joining us here in studio live in Washington, D.C., talking about, their experiences with the CPAC conference and some reaction to the news of the day. So we've got a lot in store for you tonight. It is me, Rich Valdez. We're live, we're national, and we're going to be coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
3,000 402 people died on 0 day.
Absolute nationwide terror.
Computer systems completely hijacked.
A significant number of casualties.
Every phone in America displayed the same haunting message. This will happen again.
Mullen, thanks for coming.
Madam President, so what's the plan?
Congress is authorizing a special zero-day commission, hunting down anyone who aided and abetted this horrific attack.
You're just gonna grab people off the streets without warrants.
Actually, you are.
That is a trailer of the Netflix film that depicts the president becoming stricken with Alzheimer's and a African-American female vice president taking over as president. Go figure, right? It's almost like they scripted that from somewhere. Anyway, that's what's going on in Netflix. And what's interesting is from a tweet that I saw from Ann Vandersteel, this was already in the works way before Election Day. So is this the writing on the wall? Is this predictive programming? What is it really all about? I don't know a whole ton about it, but I want to learn more about it. Ann Vandersteel is our guest. She hosts a couple of different programs. She is a recognized name in conservative media, and she's our guest right now. Ann Vandersteel, welcome.
Hey, Rich, great to be with you. Thank you so much. And yeah, Hollywood strikes again, right? The MK Ultra predictive programming team was busy at work with yet another movie to try and tell us what we should have to swallow. But apparently they weren't prepared for the red wave in November. So like, everybody in America take a bow. You stopped Hollywood once again. It's awesome.
Oh, man. Amen to that. And it's so interesting, right, to see how these things play out, things that we think are fiction, science fiction, political fiction, when maybe it's not, right? It's not fiction. Maybe it's really the way they want things to go, or trying to soften the blow. It's very interesting when you look at the history and you see that the CIA had a very active role in early Hollywood, and I would presume up to and including through recent times, that there really is a molding of the media we consume and how they want things to be seen, Ann.
It is, and it has been going on since, really since the beginning of the 19th century, or 20th century, early 1900s. Hollywood has been infiltrated, just like everything in our government. We have been infiltrated down into the local level. Nothing has been left for the people to actually be in control of. Why? Because sadly, we relinquished control. We believed and trusted the government that we had. And that was our biggest mistake, because we shirked our responsibilities of custodians of the Constitution. We are the beneficiaries, are supposed to be, and we became the trustees. And that's where things went sideways for the American people. When we stopped doing our job as the government, we the people, the government, we let everybody else take control. And frankly, we have a lot to atone for. But America's waking up. I think this election in November proved it. And I think what we're seeing through the Department of Government Efficiency, exposing the vast amounts, the trillions and trillions of dollars that have come out of our backside, our sweat equity, our labor, and it has been given away for nefarious purposes, including, the budget that goes to the big six media corporation to basically lie and propagandize the American people. And this goes back to Obama and, of course, the Smith Modernization Act of 2012 that he signed into, where the government can use media to propagandize the American people. And they'll use every tool, including Hollywood. So I'm just really happy to see that Americans see this. That tweet I put out went viral, and it's because people recognize the fraud and the complicity and the duplicity of the CIA and Hollywood, and of course the woke nature of what's coming out of that establishment. And we reject it wholeheartedly. It's beautiful to see us waking up.
Folks, we're on with Ann Vandersteel, AnnVandersteel.com. Now, Ann, I think you raise a really good point, that there seems to be a shift, right? There was, for a long time, I think the American people, let me preface what I'm going to say with, I think the American people are very good people, right? They're a good-natured people, good-hearted, trusting people. And because they're not looking to do harm, they don't think people are doing harm to them or getting one over on them. But I think what we're seeing, right, and you mentioned Doge, I think Doge is really exposing in an explosive kind of way how much waste and fraud and abuse actually is out there. And when you look at that, I'm hoping that people can look at this with an open mind and say, it's not beyond the pale to think that this, and this could be happening as well. Do you see a shift when you're out there speaking with the world that people are more, sensitive to the idea that maybe they're not telling us the truth? Maybe they're running game on us.
I absolutely see that. I mean, even the people on the left. I spent 10 weeks, Rich, up in North Carolina after Hurricane Helene and put a documentary out about what I saw, what I witnessed, what the people suffered through. And the part that was most fascinating to me was Asheville is a deep blue city, and they are very much of the belief that it's, the state will take care of them. And what they learned, sadly, was the state wasn't there, neither was the federal government, but it was the people coming out of the hills, the people that are opposite to them politically speaking. The folks up in the mountains came out, the conservatives, and they took care of their neighbors in Asheville and helped them when a landslide took out their family and their house and what have you. That's where people came together before the election, and thank God, because they set partisan politics aside and they recognized it was the people that were going to help people. And that, in fact, is the power structure of our government. And I think it was, that was a great awakening that happened in that state. And look at what's happening in California, the seat of liberal bastionism, right? They've lost control of the wheel. They've lost the narrative. And they're panicking right now. They're absolutely panicking with what they're witnessing, that the American people have recognized. The government wasn't here to help them. The government was here to take their money and send it to Ukraine or to wherever, but it was never to support the American people. And Joe Biden was very clear when he said the United States government does not have money for North Carolinians. We gave it to the illegals to house them. So Americans are going to have to help Americans. He couldn't have been more plain spoken.
Yeah, and I think that was one of those wake-up moments, right, where people were like, hold on a second, what's going on here? All of a sudden, Trump sounds that much better, right, to many of the Trump haters that were out there. They're like, I think I like this America First stuff. Crazy. It's crazy the way things unravel when you give it enough time. Now, Ann, I want to get your take on a couple of domestic political things.
Sure.
And I guess we'll set the stage because we're about to take a break, but we'll come back. One of those being Kash Patel being confirmed yesterday and being sworn in a couple hours ago, and giving his first speech talking about living the American dream and how he, this kid, a brown kid from New York like me, was able to make it. And I think, there couldn't have been a better pick, honestly. And secondly, General C.Q. Brown, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, that was, I think, his job. He's been fired by President Trump in the last, hour or two. And there's a replacement on the way. So I want to get your reaction to those things and everything else that's going on in the news when we come back. Folks, we are on with Ann Vandersteel. Make sure you check out her website, annvandersteel.com. She's got a couple of different programs. She's got American Made. She's also got Right Now with Ann Vandersteel. And she's giving you the unvarnished truth as she sees it through her eyes. So make sure you check that out. And I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you, if you love this interview with Ann or any of our other guests, make sure you go to richvaldez.com. Of course, that's Valdez with an S. And you can download the podcast episode of this program or any other of our shows or any of our interviews that you like. You could share them with your friends, share them with your family, send them a link to the website, or just send them a link to the podcast. Again, that's richvaldez.com. And your calls and more are coming up just in a few short minutes. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't go anywhere. It's Rich Valdez coming back with our guest, Ann Vandersteel.
Look at Rich Valdez. He's now a radio host, and he's a great radio host.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I am living the American dream. And anyone that thinks the American dream is dead, just look right here. You're talking to a first-generation Indian kid who's about to lead the law enforcement community of the greatest nation on God's green earth. That can't happen anywhere else. To the senators and the men and women of the United States House of Representatives, you placed an enormous trust in me, an enormous leap of faith, one that I didn't know that I could possibly earn back, but I'm going to spend every single day on this job doing so. The fact that you placed the confidence you did in me has inspired me to reach new heights at this job. I promise you the following: there will be accountability within the FBI and outside of the FBI, and we will do it through rigorous constitutional oversight starting this weekend.
That is Kash Patel, a brown kid from New York, making it big time. It's a man after my own heart right there. And I love what he said. I love the staunch warning he gave earlier when he said, if you try to hide from accountability, we will hunt you down and find you in every end of this country. I want to go back to our guest, Ann Vandersteel, investigative journalist, constitutional advocate, and co-founder of American Made Foundation. We'll talk about that in a moment. And you just heard Kash Patel. He sounds like he means business. What's your reaction?
Oh, my gosh. This is a gentleman who has had a front row seat into the corruption in the government now for how long? Under President Trump, he had to basically go through and get our really good friend, General Mike Flynn, seeing what went down with that entire corruption, watching the FBI set up what I consider to be one of the greatest men that has ever served in our country, period, General Michael Flynn. Watch him get set up by an FBI that lied on their own paperwork, their own 302, because they had to get Flynn. They knew they needed to get Trump. We have all the receipts, the messages. We know about the collusion that was going on, and it didn't work. It didn't stick. And now we're looking at the corruption that is being exposed by members of Congress that allowed these payments to go out and just money to be squandered by the trillions of dollars. If Kash Patel is the man that we all believe him to be, I would expect, no wonder that the real estate in Washington, D.C. is at fire sale pricing right now. If people are looking on Redfin and Zillow, D.C. is for sale. Pretty much it's all for sale because they realize the graft and corruption is over. They're not going to get away with it anymore. The deep state has been caught. President Trump told us this before he left after his first term. I caught them all. And guess what? He had 4 years to get his ducks in a row, to get cash, to get the team at Doge, to build the algorithms, to be ready so they hit the ground running. And that's why the mainstream media can't keep up. They don't even know what to say. They're crying right now. They're all hysterical, and they're running around like chickens with their heads cut off because cash is coming for them. And look at the ease in which we got these confirmations done. Yes, they drugged their feet, but we've gotten everybody through. It hasn't even really been a hiccup.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, we are going to finally get the restitution, the accountability that we're looking for. And people like AOC and Chuck Schumer and others should be literally looking for countries that don't have extradition treaties with the United States. Iran, Oman, and a few others. Look, she married her brother. We know this. And she's talking about how she's here for Somalis. And those are her priority in Minnesota, not the American people. This is insanity. This is not representation, and Kash is going to help, I think, really right this ship.
Ann Vandersteel, what are your thoughts on what this accountability looks like? Now, I oftentimes go back and forth with people, and I tell them, look, the people that are allowed to commit crimes are the people that have some sort of immunity, particularly politicians, right? Politicians, it's the easiest way to break the law is if you helped write the law, right? You talk about Chuck Schumer and these people. The speech and debate clause of the Constitution oftentimes protects them. Now, unless it's a red-handed, caught with your hand in the cookie jar kind of moment, I think for the most part, other than embarrassment, nothing really happens. But maybe I'm wrong. What say you?
Oh, no. It's funny that you should bring that up because I am all about the Department of Government Accountability. American Made Foundation has a 501c3, and we have an action arm, a C4, where we are actually actively going after CPS and the family law courts, the administrative courts, which are completely, utterly corrupt. They have contempt for the American people. They have contempt for the rule of law. We just put a post up today where we had a family court judge literally mute one of the members in the dispute because he asked for the judge's oath of office and he asked for the opposing counsel's oath of office, to which the judge said, you should assume I'm here lawfully. No, we don't assume anything anymore. If there's one thing we've learned in this country, we can assume nothing because they've been lying to us forever. And it's our job to fact check these people that will continually take advantage. So when it comes to what Kash Patel and Pam Bondi and the team that President Trump has put together in a cabinet, we should expect complete transparency, which I think we're getting with DOJ. They have a DOJ department for every single agency. We're getting daily briefings coming out of the White House with President Trump bringing in people to talk about X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. And we've got an FBI director that had originally said he was going to turn the FBI into a museum. I said they should all agencies should become Holocaust museums. Look, he's only the 9th FBI director.
Yeah.
The FBI is not a constitutional agency. It was not born from our Constitution. It's not one of these essential services. So, Rich, we have got to really look deep and ask ourselves, what do we expect from the FBI?
Right.
And if we can't expect transparency and accountability, then we need to shut it down. It just needs to go away.
Listen, I agree with you. And my hope is that we'll see some accountability and we'll see something that's strong. And I think something that, again, Trump is really doing really well is highlighting the problem, but not just saying, hey, look, there's a problem. He's really showing the American people there's a problem, showing them where it is, kind of bringing them through this didactic and deductive manner of explaining things, where most Americans who don't care about this are finding this very fascinating, and people who never had an interest in politics are all of a sudden armchair sleuths, and they have an interest in their government. They have an interest in learning things and what's the latest thing that Elon's cutting with his big chainsaw. And that, to me, is exciting. It's exciting to see that civic education's come alive anew in this new Trumpian era, which I think is fantastic.
Well, civics and history and understanding how government works has all of a sudden become sexy again. Yeah. I mean, thanks to Elon, thanks to social media, the Generation Y and Generation Zers, or whatever they are now after the millennials, they are finally getting involved in what's happening. And frankly, we would not have been able to do it if we hadn't had somebody brave like Elon step out and make his platform so accessible and be very transparent himself. And, again, President Trump is a master at highlighting people, telling you great job like he did to Mike Pompeo, and then the next day he yanked a security clearance. Mm-hmm. This is the kind of stuff that Trump does. He puts a spotlight on you, Rich, and be careful, because you can get burned under the sun. And I think that's what Americans are learning right now. Don't let the fact that something is happening over there be the distraction. Eyes open on everything. And it's really quite an exciting time to be alive, and really transformative, and it's the rebirth of our republic. I'm thrilled to be able to witness it at this time and be a participant. That's what we need to be a participant. Yeah.
You know what they say, you mess with the bull, you get the horns. Ann Vandersteel, let everybody know how they can find you and the programming that you offer.
Great. You can find me on annvandersteel.com, and also I encourage people to check out what we're doing over at AmericanMadeFoundation.org. Appreciate the time tonight, Rich. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Let's do it again soon. Godspeed to you, Ann. Thank you.
Godspeed to you.
All right, amigos, we continue your phone calls and more. Plus, I'm going to bring on a United States military veteran who spent some time on a submarine only to get older, get into his professional life, and become a pollster of all things. This guy's all numbers all the time, and he could crack a joke every now and again. You're going to really enjoy that conversation. Then, the legendary Lou Dobbs, his executive producer, took over his show, The Great American Show, and he's going to be joining us as well. And both of these guys are at CPAC. They're making their way to the studio. They're going to join us live in studio separately. I don't like to do more than one-on-one interviews, but we're going to have a lot of fun for the rest of this evening. And, of course, your calls. Open phones across America, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez live with you till midnight, 1 a.m. in some areas of the country. And, of course, Open Phones Across America is going to be kicking off momentarily. So get your calls in 833-4825-337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And as promised, because I was in CPAC earlier today, CPAC, of course, the Conservative Political Action Conference, biggest conservative conference in America, and bumped into a lot of amazing patriots there today, many that I'm sure I saw and I didn't mention earlier. But one of the folks that I met today, and he's a friend of a friend, Mark Mitchell. He's from Rasmussen. You've heard of Rasmussen. They do all this great polling. And we were talking about it, and I said, that's so funny. Yesterday, I had asked our producers to get me a pollster, and they reached out to John McLaughlin, and they reached out to Robert Cahaley, and everybody was like, I'm traveling, I'm here, I'd love to do it, but I can't. So we didn't do the polling story. But there was a story in USA Today about this poll, right? There's a poll that was published on January 28th, an aggregator by 538, and it showed a lot of interesting information about President Trump's approval with the American people. And I said, this seems like it's fake, it's phony, and it's fraud to me. I talk to people, and when I talk to people, I'm like, what are you thinking? They're like, it's fantastic. They're over the top happy. They're not like, it's all right, let's see what happens, give him a chance. That's not what they're saying. What they're saying is, it's about time, he's not doing enough, he should be going harder. So I said, I want to find out what's going on with these polls. So I figured, let me feel this guy out a little bit here. Let me see what he's all about. We start talking, and he was on submarines, and he went to the Naval Academy, and he's got all this top secret information I can't talk about. So, and he didn't tell me. He can't tell you either. But he's a number cruncher, a polling machine. Mark Mitchell, welcome.
Great to be here. Yeah, maybe in some perverse ways, being on the submarine prepared me for polling because, tracking a sub, you have to use limited information and, go with your gut and your instinct. And I'll tell you, earlier this year, my gut told me that all of the mainstream media pollsters that showed Kamala Harris winning were being less than honest. They had samples that didn't make sense to me because Donald Trump has had literally everything thrown at him. 2 impeachments. He got, arrested. They tried to throw him in jail. They tried to blame all these scams on him, and none of it stuck. And he won an election, and he came into office, and many pollsters showed numbers just like mine that he had a 53% approval rating. And then they want to have you believe that a month later, after 10 years of everything that Trump's been through, a month later, finally a bunch of people abandoned him, and now his approval rating's low. And it's all fake. And I can tell you, we're the only ones in the industry polling every single day on presidential approval. We're the experts. The numbers have not moved, and the left is just doing the same thing they always do. They're trying to use psychological warfare. So
when these people come up with this 23%, and it's up or down 3.5 points, and 21.8% comparing it to Obama in the same time, how are they coming up with these numbers?
Well, everybody just asks people questions. Some of the pollsters ask different ways. They'll use cell phones, they'll use live operators, they'll use online panels, or they'll even create their own panel, like the Reuters Ipsos panel. And some of them are better than others, but we have a methodology we've stuck with year after year, and it's proved very accurate. And we haven't messed around and changed it, and we've polled continuously for 20 years and done a great job in every election. But when you have pollsters that had Kamala Harris up 6 points, don't believe their approval rating. Like, don't believe their Trump approval rating. Because I can tell you, after 3 cycles, if they haven't
Why not? She didn't win?
No, she didn't win. So if they haven't fixed it after 3 times, they probably don't plan to fix it. And oh, by the way, some of them are probably getting money from USAID.
And that was an interesting development. We saw that, 50 plus major news organizations, not this one, were receiving money from USAID. This was very interesting. And they said, no, that's normal. We have subscriptions. We pay $10,000 a month for whatever it was for Politico, or a year, whatever it was. I want somebody to pay me $10,000 to listen to my show.
Well, I'm going to come out and break news. And Rasmussen Reports actually gets money from a government entity. Believe it or not, we actually.
So you're part of the deep state.
We sell consumer data to a couple of the Federal Reserve banks. I guess maybe they're not government, but guess what? We charge them $200. not $20,000. We charge the hedge funds $20,000 because that's how it's supposed to work. So I can tell you, we make no money from the government, and we would have a conflict of interest, in my opinion, if we did. But all of the people attacking Rasmussen Reports, Politico, who's taking millions of dollars, they wrote a hit piece of Rasmussen Reports. Reuters, they're one of the pollsters that had Kamala Harris up 6 points. Washington Post, they write a hit piece on Rasmussen. So it basically, over the last decade, everybody's tried to attack us. It's because they can't control us, and it's because we're not connected to the regime trying to get them to win.
Mark Mitchell, he's with Rasmussen. He's a pollster. He does this stuff every day. Now, what do you think it's going to take for these guys to change their tune, Mark? Because I find it interesting that they're willing to put their name and reputation out there and just go with a flow that doesn't seem to be genuine.
What it comes down to is that people's trust in the media is changing, and what they used to do is pretend that the pollsters themselves were unbiased when their polls clearly are. But people are biased. I have biases, but polls shouldn't be. And so what I do is I spend every bit of my professional effort trying to not be biased in my polls, to put out an honest piece of work, because I have people that trust what I'm reporting. And that's apparently not what happens, because it looks like everybody's managing to their boss. And if the culture of their newsroom, if their managing editor, if somebody at the top is friends with Kamala Harris, they just fold. And I've seen it. And I can point fingers and name names of the people who maybe some of them are trying to do the right jobs, but they put out work that time and time again shows Democrats winning when they're not going to.
Folks, Mark Mitchell, Rasmussen Reports. Let them know where to find your YouTube channel and how they can keep up to speed with the work you're doing.
RasmussenReports.com. We'd love to have everybody come and support us. We have a reader subscription. We are funded by advertisers and subscribers only, not funded by the deep state. And Twitter, Rasmussen_poll. Hope to see everybody there.
Mark Mitchell, you're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much.
All right, amigos, we will continue this conversation straight ahead with the host of the Great America Show, the former Lou Dobbs show, his former executive producer, now host of that program. He's going to be joining us straight ahead. That's John Fawcett. Plus, your calls and thoughts on everything. Open phones across America, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, Rich Valdez, live with you till midnight or 1 a.m. We're live. I'm emphasizing live because those other guys aren't live. I am. Estamos en vivo. Give me a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And again, President Trump, he's blasting everybody. He's secured the deal, by the way, with Zelensky. Zelensky now has capitulated. He has caved. That is the headline on the Daily Mail. Zelensky caves to Trump, and he's going to do the mineral deal, and this war is coming to an end. I say, way to go, El Trompito. Took him a month instead of a day. No criticism from me. But of course, you've got the left that are definitely going to come at him and say, but what about the price of eggs? What about the price of eggs? You know how people are. Anyway, amigos, we're coming right back. We're going to continue our familia conversation with you all, the American people. But for those of you that are bidding us adieu, I say hasta la próxima. Until the next time, take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're live, we're national, it's Friday night. Happy to be here. Give me a call, join me on our late night national town hall conversation, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And I want to get into a bunch of stuff today. We're broadcasting live today from our DC affiliate, WMAL. Big shout out to them. And of course, I'm here because of this CPAC conference, the Conservative Political Action Conference, which was held at the Convention Center at the big, it's a Marriott there, I believe, in National Harbor. And it's always a good time there. Always a good time. Matt and Mercy Schlapp put on an outstanding show. Newsmax had a very, very big stage in Media Row. It was really a good time. And I bumped into a lot of people there. Hogan Gidley, who's been on the show, I saw him there. I saw El General, right? One of our favorites, retired Air Force General Blaine Holt was there. Mike Carter, our buddy from Newsmax, was there. I mean, really just a lot of people that I haven't seen in a while. It's nice to see them. And one of the people that I bumped into is the former executive producer of the Lou Dobbs show over at Fox. And then when Lou went independent, John Fawcett stayed with him, doing all of that production work with him until Lou went to be with the Lord. And he received the honor of taking over the Great America show, Lou Dobbs' show. And John Fawcett's here with us. He's the new host of the show. John, welcome.
Rich, thanks so much for having me. It's an honor to be on your show.
Brother, the honor is mine. So first, let's start off a couple of news items I want to mention. We were talking earlier about a federal judge knocking down some of Trump's DEI executive orders, so maybe we'll get into that if there's time. If you, in a moment, maybe give us some of your reaction to CQ Brown being given the axe in the last hour or so. I think that's good news. And Zelensky, he's taken the deal, and we got a little clip of audio of that. President Trump alluding to the fact that Volodymyr Zelensky, is likely going to take the deal. Check this out.
How close are you to striking a minerals deal?
I think we're pretty close, yeah. I think they want it, and they feel good about it, and it's a big deal, but they want it, and it keeps us in that country, and they're very happy about it. But it's we get our money back. This should have been signed long before we went in. This should have been signed by Biden, but Biden didn't know too much about what he was doing.
Biden doesn't know what he's doing. That's El Trompito earlier today, and shortly after that, Mike Walsh saying, oh, no, Zelensky's going to take the deal. Oh, he's going to take the deal real soon. And shortly after that, it was reported by Daily Mail, Zelensky caves and he takes the deal. John Fawcett, what do you think?
Rich, it goes further than that. The White House reportedly puts out a statement further saying that Zelensky should maybe leave for France and get out of Ukraine soon after he takes his deal, head to France and let a new leader take over. You know, it started to get a little strange to me when Trump comes in and says he wants to start negotiating peace talks. And Zelensky gets a little nervous and says, maybe we should do peace talks, but here's some conditions. Who is Zelensky to call for any conditions when he's the man at our back door begging for $350 billion? So he comes in and thinks he's going to start calling the shots with Trump, and Trump looks at him and says, that's not really how it works. Putin's open to making a deal, which was the tough side to get. He's open to making the deal. Trump is willing to broker the deal, and you've got Zelensky saying there's no deal to be had. It's plain and simple, Rich. The administration has said it from the beginning. No to NATO, plain and simple. Move on. And Zelensky apparently is having a hard time moving on, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. That happens to the best of us. I had an ex-girlfriend once. It was very tough for me to move on to. Sometimes, it's just how it is. Now, John Fawcett, in the couple of minutes we have remaining, I want to let the audience in on your story. Because, I mean, you were a reporter and a producer at Fox and went on to do more production work with Lou Dobbs and really became a host in your own right and really taken over a really big program that Lou left behind and you've been at the helm of the whole time. What's that experience been like for you?
Well, Rich, it's sort of interesting, aside from being good friends with you. We sort of have a similar path in the way we've taken to get where we've gotten. We've started from the bottom up. We worked our rear ends off, and, we put in our time, blood, sweat, and tears. And, I started out working for Lou, I think 2019 at Fox News as a bottom-level guy. And I worked my way up. I worked extra hours when I didn't have to work, and Lou saw the ambition in me. He saw that I wanted to work as hard as I could to get to the top and take no shortcuts. And he really appreciated that. I think the work ethic, because it was one that he had and I shared together, and there was really nobody else that matched it. Working weekends, working overtime, and doing all that good stuff. So we went into that, and I worked my way up from the bottom to the top with him at Fox News, and then unceremoniously they canceled his show because he said the 2020 election was stolen. It's an opinion that we most of us share in the Trump world, and so we departed off into the sunset, and we decided to go independent media, which it seems to be the way. Radio and independent media, podcasting is the way of the future. People are tuning out of television in great depths. So we launched the Great America Show, the podcast, and we literally, Rich, we built it from the bottom up. He didn't know a thing about podcasting. I knew even less about it. But we learned together, and over the course of 3-4 years, he and I built up this massive podcast with millions and millions of listeners who are thirsty, Rich, for the mantra, truth, justice, and the American way. And Lou, as you said, left us in July. I took some time off. In August, I got right back to work because Lou started this podcast with one thing in mind, and it was getting President Trump reelected. So we worked towards that. We got it done in November. And I think we continue the show on, and it's doing very well because of great patriots who are thirsty for the truth, and it's probably the same people who are tuning into your show each and every night.
Amen to that. Now, John Fawcett, let everybody know how they can tune into the program. How do they subscribe?
So the Great America Show, you catch us on Rumble if you want to watch us on video, YouTube if you want to watch us on video. Audio, the Great America Show, wherever you get your podcasts. And for any updates, you can follow me on Twitter at John Fawcett NY.
Outstanding. Folks, I've been on this podcast, and not because I've been on it, but yes, because I've been on it. I recommend it. I think it's great. He's an excellent interviewer. He knows what he's doing, and he has his background in television, but he's really a new media guy, and he's somebody you want to subscribe. You want to know what's going on. He has very, very insightful questions on these interviews. I highly recommend them. Check him out, The Great America Show with John Fawcett of the Lou Dobbs lineage. John, thanks for being here, brother.
Rich, you missed the best part. It's free.
If it's free, it's for me. Free 99.
Thanks for having me, brother, and I'll see you soon.
You bet. All right, amigos, we're coming right back, and we're going to have a little bit of conversation with a Black Hawk pilot, and she's a woman. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
My hands across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Investigators shedding new light about what may have gone wrong when a Black Hawk helicopter collided with an American Airlines plane last month.
We are looking at the possibility of there may be bad data.
The NTSB saying the helicopter pilots may not have known exactly how high the chopper was flying. Investigators say the cockpit computers may have been showing two different altitudes.
The pilot flying indicated they were at 300 feet. The instructor pilot indicated they were at 400 feet. Neither pilot made a comment discussing an altitude discrepancy.
The NTSB says this instruction from air traffic control Telling them to go around the plane may not have been heard by the pilots at all because they may have been trying to talk to the tower at the same time. Just seconds later, the collision.
Crash, crash, crash. This is Alert 3. Crash, crash, crash. This is Alert 3.
CVR data from the Black Hawk indicated that the portion of the transmission that stated pass behind the may not have been received by the Black Hawk crew.
The crucial black box data coming just over 2 weeks after the devastating crash, which killed all 67 people aboard the two aircraft, the deadliest in the U.S. in decades.
That's a report from ABC News. And this, again, this tragedy, it boggles the mind for so many people. I mentioned earlier I was at the CPAC conference, and there's a huge window there. I don't know, 50, maybe 150 feet wide, where you can just see exactly where this went down. And while I was there, on a number of occasions, there were helicopters and planes taking off and landing. And it's just really remarkable that this type of accident occurred. And when one would think that we're so technologically advanced, but what do I know, right? I've never flown a Black Hawk helicopter. So I want to bring in one of the pros. Elizabeth McCormick is retired from the United States Army. She's a decorated former Black Hawk helicopter pilot, and she's our guest right now. Elizabeth, welcome.
Happy to shed some light on this, I hope.
Yeah, well, what are your thoughts based on, what you're hearing in the latest updates with this? Do you think it was an altitude issue, a mechanical issue? It seems lots of things are pointing towards the training exercise on the Black Hawk as opposed to the American Airlines flight.
Yeah, I would say from looking at everything in detail, as I have over the last 3 weeks, is that the CRJ, the commercial regional jet, an airliner, did nothing wrong. They were in protected airspace. They were under air traffic control. They were on an approach, which on an approach and a takeoff, that's the most vulnerable time for a jet. So that they were protected in that. I really, the errors, I think it's not one thing, it's multiple things. It's a convergence of these multiple things that happen. And really it kind of boils down to three things: policy, communication, and altitude.
Now, talk to us about altitude, because there was in the report that we just played, they talked about a discrepancy of 100 feet. One saying 300 feet, the other one saying 400 feet. Some, independent and other pilots are saying that this level of altitude wasn't appropriate. You being somebody that's flown this type of aircraft, what is your assessment of the altitude it should have been at?
Well, we know from the charts and from the route that it had a ceiling of 200 feet. So no matter what, whether they were at 300 or 400, they were too high. And from that same briefing, it was acknowledged that, hey, we're too high, we're descending. With that, the discrepancy in the aircraft is, of course, troubling. It's a redundant system. There's a altimeter in front of each pilot that are completely independent of each other. So that's how you would have two different altitude readings. I'm surprised that there wasn't more conversation about the difference in the reading. I'd be curious, and I'm anxious to see the entire transcript, not just the bits and pieces the NTSB released. Because what were they doing in between? Were they simulating, as a training mission, simulating a real-world mission scenario? Were they simulating emergency procedures? What was their situational awareness going on during this time?
So when you were doing this, when you were training for it, how was your training?
For like an annual performance evaluation, what they were doing?
I'm guessing anything similar to what you would assess that they were doing. Did you train in a similar manner?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So every year you do what's called around your birth month. You take a physical, right? A flight physical. You take a psychiatric evaluation. You would fly under instrument modes with an instructor pilot, and then you would fly night vision goggles and usually combined with the instruments and night vision goggles, they would throw some emergency procedures at you. So they would say, oh, this is happening in the aircraft. It doesn't actually happen in the aircraft, but it is a division of focus. So they throw things at you. They want to make sure that you are competent and maintain that high level of proficiency that pilots are expected to have. And so this is a normal annual, we don't get all puckered up and worried about them because we have them every single year. It's just a routine as part of being a pilot.
Got it. So your thinking is this may have been that type of assessment where they're just doing their thing, and the fact that they were having these discrepancies with the altimeter is because they have different gauges. Did I understand that right?
So this is going to have to come out of the investigation,
Sure.
Why the gauges were reading differently. But the fact that one was reading differently than the other, it could have been before each flight you get an updated weather briefing right before you take off. And part of that weather briefing is the barometric pressure. That barometric pressure is then dialed in to the barometric altimeter, because how thick or heavy the air is affects how it reads your height above ground level. So that's a manual setting that the pilots have to turn a dial and rotate in on an analog gauge. There's also a radar altimeter that is in a different area, and that one is based off one radar and has a height on that and provides a height that way too, which can give slightly off readings over a river because of the reflections and the waves. It was windy. There's things that can cause that. The other thing is 100 feet it sounds like a lot. Okay. It sounds like a lot, but 100 feet can happen in seconds. So it's not, it's possible to creep. We're finding out as I suspected, they were under the night vision goggles for that proficiency. And so under night vision goggles, you're looking through toilet paper tubes, looking out. So to look at your instrumentation, you're looking underneath your goggles.
Right.
And so the scan of the instrumentation is a little not quite as fast. So it's possible that there was some creep. They're still wrong. They were still too high, but that is definitely a contributing factor to that. Now, here's something that nobody's talking about from that same NTSB briefing, because I watched the whole thing start to finish. I've looked at the transcript.
And you understood what they were saying because you do this stuff.
Right, yeah. So I had a good understanding of what they were talking about. Like most people, I'm kind of translating it for your listeners. So the one thing nobody's really seems to have picked up on was at 2.5 minutes before impact, the CRJ on their approach path descending to land was at 1,700 feet.
Is that a lot?
The Black Hawk, well,
that's where they're supposed to be, right? Yeah.
That's where they're supposed to be. It's normal. But here's where it gets interesting. For lack of a better word there.
Well, you know what? I want to pause you right here just because we're going to hit a break, and I don't want to get into the weeds, and I want to make sure
we'll come back.
We leave them on a cliffhanger. This is where it gets interesting, folks. Elizabeth McCormick, retired Black Hawk helicopter pilot for the United States Army, and she's an inspirational speaker as well. We're going to learn about some of her work in that realm as well. Folks, keep it locked right here. It's Rich Valdez. We're coming right back with Elizabeth McCormick. Don't go anywhere.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right? But right. You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue our conversation with retired Army Black Hawk helicopter pilot Elizabeth McCormick. And Elizabeth McCormick, we left the audience on a cliffhanger. You said what nobody's talking about is this, and here's where it gets interesting. Let's pick up where you left off.
Okay. So the CRJ is descending from 1,700 feet 2.5 minutes before impact. At the same time, the Black Hawk, realizing they were high, is descending. So they're at their 300/400, depending on the gauge reading, descending. And they're wearing night vision goggles. So imagine you're wearing toilet paper tubes in front of your eyes and looking through those to see. How high can you see? How far upward can you see through those? Then you've got the rotor system spinning up higher too. So when air traffic control earlier had asked if they had visual on the CRJ, what air traffic control did not tell the Black Hawk is there were 3 jets in their visual area. There was one at their 2 o'clock taking off. There was this one descending, right, turning around from a different runway and coming now to the runway 33 we know now. And then there was another bigger jet beyond the CRJ that was going to land after them. So there were 3 aircraft in their sight line, and air traffic control never specified that even said that there were 3 that they should be looking out for. So what I think happened is they had one of the ones further away in their visual, and because the other one was coming from high at we're talking a 1,500 foot difference, so 5 times their height higher, that they truly did not see that aircraft in the Black Hawk.
So truly a tragic accident.
Truly a tragic accident.
And sadly, if that is the case, one that likely they couldn't avoid because they couldn't see it unless they took off the goggles or whatnot.
Right. So, I mean, there's a couple things. I mentioned policy. Like, they only had a crew of 3 on board. One of the questions I have for the NTSB was that crew chief in the back on the right side or on the left side? Because if they were on the left side, they might have seen it. I suspect they were on the right side, and they were flying with a minimum crew of 3 when they really, for a night vision goggle mission in crowded airspace like that, they really should have had 2 crew chiefs. And one of the things I've pushed out of this is that they need a crew of 4 should be required for visual flights where they need for safety, where they need to have visibility on both sides of the aircraft at the same time.
Wow.
So air traffic control, when the collision alert's going off in the tower, which it was, when the collision alert, they have on their monitor when there's 2 aircraft in too close of proximity, an alert goes off. Could have communicated on a guard frequency, which overrides all frequencies, and said, DCA traffic, hold your position. Like, something more emergent than, do you have visual on that? Pass behind. Like, that's more of a routine call, not a collision alert urgent call, right? Knowing that the Black Hawk is more nimble than the jet, air traffic control could have, and in the past has been known to, tell helicopter traffic to hold short of that approach line and not cross beneath an aircraft. So, talking with other pilots from that area, they have said, why didn't air traffic control tell them to hold short or to hold their position? So it wasn't just it wasn't just the altitude, it wasn't just the visibility, it wasn't just air traffic control, right? It was this horrible convergence of multiple factors that if you had taken any one of those factors out, that were potential errors, mechanical, what those will be determined in the investigation. But if you take any one of those out, this might not have happened.
Wow. That you're right. That's a take I have not heard before, and one that sounds very, very plausible. Folks, we're on with Elizabeth McCormick. She is a retired Black Hawk helicopter pilot, and she's also an inspirational speaker. And I would imagine that you have accrued a lot of very interesting experiences that henceforth inspire people when you go out to speak with them. Tell us how you went from flying Black Hawks to giving speeches.
For me, it went organically. I was injured and medically retired, and so I was working in a corporate job, and my community found out I was a helicopter pilot and asked me to start speaking at the schools and for the youth, and for and then I would do one or two, and I'd get 5 more phone calls, and I would do some when I could around my corporate job, and then I would turn down a lot of them, and corporations started calling me, asking me to come in and pay me, and I'm still working in a corporate job part-time. So, and around that same time, then a couple months later, I got laid off from my corporate job, and I knew this is what I was supposed to do. And it's been 15 years now.
Wow. So I'm supposing you travel the country, and do you deal with corporate like companies for inspiration, or younger people, or everybody across the board?
Pretty much everybody across the board, mostly corporations, associations, organizations that need to inspire and motivate their people into action. I'm famous for teaching them how to fly a helicopter. So right hand, left hand, feet, and I get the whole room leaning together with a rapport building shared experience. But I feel like the 15 years I've had doing this, Rich, have prepared me for helping people understand this incident. Because what I do as a speaker is I talk about aviation in a way people can understand.
Right.
And I translate it. And that's helped me these last few weeks be on the air and helped not just the American public. I've been interviewed in Australia and UK and Japan and Brazil about this incident, because the world wants to know, how could this happen?
Yeah, I think we all want to know. And especially with, if you're dealing with Americans, we tend to, I know I do, I tend to think there's funny business, right? Right away. I'm like, hold on a second. Somebody did something bad. One of the first things that I heard was that this type of plane, helicopter, could be flown remotely. And there was a video going around from, I think, Lockheed Martin or one of the big defense contractors.
There was some testing on a unmanned. I prefer unpersoned version, but it was decided that there's too many things that can go wrong in aviation, where you also want to have that person to make the mission changes and to be able to assess what's going on, and also you have to think about things like how hardened are the computer systems from hacking or from someone else taking the controls over. So those are all factors when you're dealing with unpersoned flight.
Very interesting stuff, really is. And from hearing your explanation, thank you for translating, and now it makes a lot more sense to me. Honestly, early on, I was like, this whole thing just doesn't make sense. People that fly Blackhawks are really good at what they do. I've never been in a plane crash with a commercial flight, so I was like, I don't understand. How did this just happen? And it's such a busy airport. But the way you've explained it, it's almost like that, back in 2012 when we had that Hurricane Sandy, it wasn't just a hurricane. They call it a superstorm because everything was right. It was like Murphy's Law, right? Whatever can go wrong will go wrong, and it did. And this seems like a similar situation.
Well, the good news is this doesn't happen very often, right? It's been, 20 years since we, as a country, have had a major loss of life aircraft accident like this. And then we suddenly have we call it a cluster, where there's just a whole bunch of them, with the Delta in Toronto, the Endeavour flight that had the landing that caused it to flip upside down. And then there was the Learjet over Philadelphia. So there's been a number of incidences lately, and I've been asked a lot about. I've been asked, first off, was the Black Hawk, was it terrorism? Was it suicide? No. First of all, like, you hear a lot about veterans and suicide, but active duty, you have a mission, you have a purpose. Like, a lot of veterans struggle when they're out because they've lost their identity of who they are and their job and their unit is their family, and they feel like they've lost all that. Like when you're active duty, you are so on mission and on purpose and there's so much pride in what you do and who you are and how you show up as a pilot for the military, that and in all pilots in general, we have a lot of pride in, I don't want to say ego, but it's just an intensity of pride that we're taking care of people and we're safe and we perform at this high level of capacity to do that there's absolutely no way that this was intentional, despite how that video looked.
Right. Yeah, I get that. And I appreciate you kind of honing in on that. Because, again, I think many people, myself included, we have a tendency to just kind of go with whatever, right? You go with your gut. You're like, there's something wrong here. This doesn't look right. And sometimes things are what meets the eye, and sometimes they're not. But in this situation, after hearing your explanation, it really does sound like it was one of those things, you know. Had they done this, had they done that, had they done this and that, then maybe this wouldn't have happened. But they were doing all these different things.
And what we're finding out now is there was a close call even the day before this happened between a helicopter and a regional jet on approach. So this corridor was known for having heavy traffic, again, which I would say you needed a fourth crew chief in there for that piece of it from the military side, but also air traffic control and the FAA and the Department of Transportation. That airspace needs to be relooked at. Like at one point when Dulles was built, it was built to replace DCA and Reagan National. So, and then they decided, because who runs, Rich? Who runs DCA National Airport?
Yeah, I have no clue. I have no clue.
It's one of the few. It's one of the few national airports that we have in the country, and it is run by Congress.
Oh wow!
So when it came time to consider shutting down DCA, because they had built this brand new, beautiful Dulles Airport further out of the city, where it was safer, further from the monuments, the Capitol, all that, the Congress said, "Well, wait, that's not convenient for us to get in and out of the city faster. That's going to take up more time."
Elizabeth McCormick,
instead,
I want to pause you right here just because I got to take a quick commercial break. We'll come back. I want everybody to know how they can learn more about your work. So don't go anywhere. Folks are coming right back with Black Hawk pilot Elizabeth McCormick.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, we return with our guest, Elizabeth McCormick, retired Black Hawk helicopter pilot and inspirational speaker. You can learn more about that from her website. Elizabeth, tell us the website so people can follow your work.
It is so easy. I am pilotspeaker.com and Pilot Speaker on everything social as well.
Follow her at Pilot Speaker on all the social platforms and go to her website, pilotspeaker.com. Elizabeth McCormick, you are a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot, and I thank you for being here tonight.
I'm happy to help shed some light on this tragic incident.
Much appreciated. Hope to do it again soon and hopefully under better circumstances.
I 100% agree.
Thank you. And amigos, to your calls we go. 833-482-5337, 833-4VALDEZ. Let us go to Nevada City, California. KNCO in the building, and check in with Eric. Eric, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Yeah, that's actually California.
California.
Yeah, California, the Socialist Republic of, let me tell you. I've never met such a bunch of that Mussolini guy down there is really something. Calling him a commie is like giving him a compliment. You know, Jesus, it's been pretty bad here. I mean, you know, I was born in the very early 60s and grew up here, and men were men and the sheep were scared. But now everybody's scared here in this country, I'll tell you. There are some real freaks out here.
I believe you. Listen, when I was a little kid, you guys produced Reagan. Now you got Mussolini, as you just called him. Amazing how times change.
Wasn't too good on the domestic policies, but you know, once he got to being president, boy, I'll tell you what, he sure took it to heart, and we had a strong military. You know, nobody was worried about whether they thought they was a man or a woman. They could look down and tell which they was, you know, but that's not anymore out here, I'll tell you what.
What do you blame it on? What do you think is going on? Why is the left so far off?
Well, because they're cheating. That's exactly why. I mean, this last election, no, it was the election before last, they caught some guy passed out in a parking lot down in, I think it was San Rafael or San Rosa, one of them places. And he was, you know, passing out from doing too much crank, I guess. Had a gun in the car and 400 ballots in the back of his seat and trunk. You know, and that was just one guy they caught. I mean, Mussolini, when we went to do the recall on him, he was like barely 49, 50% in the polls. And then all of a sudden, he miraculously wins by 65% of the vote. Bull pucky.
Yeah.
We're not buying it.
I hear that. It's, you know, it's interesting to see how these things play out. And something we were talking about a little while ago in the last hour was the amount of people that are once would think of that and go, there's no way they did that. There's no way there was any malfeasance coming from our government, to today where people are there's many people who are just totally incredulous with everything, right? They're just like, no, absolutely, I don't believe anything you're saying. And you have others that are open to questioning and being skeptical, saying, yeah, maybe that's not true. And I find it it's probably healthy, right? The skepticism is healthy to have so that people don't get the the wool dragged over their eyes. So anyway, just a very good point you made there, and I appreciate it. Eric in Nevada City, California, KNCO. We're going to pause right here. Going to come right back to the rest of your calls. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, we're going to get to your calls right now. Let's see. Brody, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, KDKA. Go for it, brother.
Oh, my God, you're my brother. You know how good it is to hear you all the time on the radio? Your prayers are with a lot of people from Pittsburgh. I just want to tell you that.
Oh, that's very kind.
I mean, I really mean that. And, I just was thinking about the general that was fired today by Donald Trump.
CQ Brown, yeah.
Yeah, and he thanked him for 40 years of service and everything, and hopefully he can leave graciously. But things are just changing on the forefront. And
Brody, hang on. I don't want to cut you off. I want to make sure you get a chance, but I got to take this pause right here. Amigos, keep it locked right here. We're going to continue our conversation with you all, the American people. Don't go anywhere. And if this is the end of the road for you, hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night, and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy to be here with you this evening. And we're live, we're national, and we're broadcasting from our affiliate in Washington, D.C., WMAL. And I'm in town, of course, for CPAC. So if I sound a little bit run down, it's because I've been running around all day. But very, very interesting conversations that we've had this evening so far. A lot more interesting conversation coming up. We're going to talk about tax season coming up, and that's always a fun topic too. But something I want to get into is some of the news of the day. Of course, General C.Q. Brown has been terminated by the Trump administration. He was thanked for his 40 years of service. President Zelensky has agreed to the deal that El Trompito had presented to him, which I think is a very, very good place to start, right? Very, very good place to start with things. So as we get more on that, I'll bring you more information on that. But as of a couple of hours ago, the headline was Zelensky caves, and this is, of course, caving to the deal that was proposed by President Trump, the mineral deal. So we don't have all the details, but we know what's going on. And we got a report on that. Check this out.
Trump's team is presenting Zelensky with a new rare earth mineral deal after the first one fell through. It's unclear exactly what's going to be in this deal, but it's likely going to have more security guarantees for Ukraine to come back to the negotiating table after Zelensky shot the first deal down. The first deal, presented by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, wanted 50% of Ukraine's rare earth minerals, valued at $500 billion, according to Trump. Now, that large amount was going to be in exchange for no additional security guarantees, at least according to Zelensky. Zelensky didn't want that deal to go through because he said he wanted an agreement that America would continue supporting Ukraine in its war against Russia. Trump has been talking about securing this rare earth mineral deal as a way to get money back from Ukraine that the U.S. has invested over the past 3 years, billions of dollars to help Ukraine in its war against Russia. Ukraine is one of the largest suppliers in the world of some of these minerals that would be good for American manufacturing and technology manufacturing. And this would be a big win for Trump if the deal did go through.
Well, there you go. That is what's going on with El Trompito and Volodymyr Zelensky. So we're going to keep you up to speed on what's going on with that. We're also going to keep you up to speed with everything else that's going on. And just to give you an idea, a couple of the things that we're looking at tonight. AG Pam Bondi says that she has the Epstein client list sitting on her desk. And she's also reviewing the JFK and MLK files that have been declassified. So that's interesting news. I know a lot of people are eagerly anticipating that. I'm not one of them so much. The Epstein stuff, yeah, definitely want to know what's going on there. Because I think, he and more of, I shouldn't say he, the way he lived and died, or allegedly died, is indicative that there's stuff that he knows that people don't want you to know. But his partner in crime, his pimp, Ghislaine Maxwell, well, she alluded to the fact that there are a lot of very high-level people, royalty and this and that and politicians and rich people. So I'm very interested in knowing who's on the list, right? What do we got to do? And is Diddy on the list? And speaking of Diddy, his lawyer wants the sex trafficking case thrown out of court. Imagine that. This guy's in big trouble over here. But one of the lawyers requested to step down from the legal battle since they can't get this case dismissed, I would presume. His name's Anthony Rico. He's Combs' attorney. He submitted a motion for the attorney to be removed from the rapper's case. Isn't that something? So as that continues, we'll get you the latest on that as well. Anyway, folks, I want to continue. I left off with Brody. We cut him off earlier because he was up against the clock, but we're back. Brody, go right ahead, sir.
I'm glad you think I'm important enough. I'm honored that you love my calls, and you just have no idea. But the thing is, what I was saying about that, like, he's really cleaning shop here, and Donald Trumpito, beautiful, beautiful things are happening. So, I'm here in Pittsburgh, and there's just a lot of woke culture, progressive culture that runs our government here in Pittsburgh. It's just not good. So, we can't get a Republican in there. It's just because it's the Democratic town. That's the way it is. But there's this senator, member of the U.S. Representatives, Summer Lee, at the 12th, district. And she just went on, they're just having a conniption. She went on a racist rant against white people and Trump's Hitler, and she's out of her mind. She's she's out of her mind, and she's, I don't know, my birthday was February 5th.
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Thank you. 57, Heinz 57, very Pittsburgh. She was going off on this Gaza thing, too, because she represents the Palestinians. Like, I don't even know who got her elected in here, because she represents a district that has a lot of Jewish people there. She has showed her anti-Semitism. We have Bethany Hallam in city council, wacko. We have a judge that lets criminals out. We have a Mayor Gainey that's horrible, that's going up against an incumbent. He's going up against Corey O'Connor, who kind of like, it's very sucking up kind of like to the progressives. We can't get a Republican here, but we can get moderate Democrats. And that's what I want to say. Your words and your show and the people's, the shoes you stepped in really make a difference. I just want to tell you that, okay? And
very
so
kind. Thank you, brother. I love to hear that that we're useful and that this provides a service beyond entertaining people in the late night, there's actual benefit to as well. So thank you. I really appreciate it, Brody. Big shout out to you in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and KDKA. And I want to take a quick pause right here because I want to talk about finances and tax day, and I got to do my taxes. So maybe you got to do yours too. Let's get into a conversation on that, especially since 6,000 IRS employees were fired yesterday. Lots to discuss. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Rich Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The Trump administration will lay off about 7,000 probationary IRS employees out of 90,000 total. President Donald Trump's advisor, Alina Habba, says it'll affect your tax returns.
Yeah, in a good way. The reason is very simple. You cannot continue to waste American taxpayer dollars on giving it to illegal immigrants.
Kentucky Congressman James Comer says Democrats have used the IRS to target conservatives.
We've never seen a more weaponized federal government.
Under the Biden administration, the IRS targeted wealthy Americans who failed to pay their taxes. They said they recovered over $1 billion at the time. Democrats say that may be behind some of these workforce cuts.
Donald Trump and Republicans have eviscerated so many of our institutions in order to cater to the whims of billionaires.
The president of the National Taxpayers Union, Pete Sepp, says he's against cuts to the IRS workforce because he says it may slow down the modernization of the IRS. He says their computer systems are nearly 6 decades old.
It is incredibly vulnerable to hacking, it is slow, and it is not suited for a 21st century tax agency.
The director of the National Economic Council says he hopes modernization leads to more cuts,
especially as we improve the IT at the IRS.
In Washington, I'm Vinay Simlot.
So there you go. Lots going on with the IRS with tax season upon us. And I want to get into that with America's financial planner, Derrick Kinney's back with us. Derrick, welcome back, sir.
Rich, thank you. Thanks for having me. Great to be with you.
My pleasure. Now, I want to get your take because a lot of things are happening. I heard about some funny business. Apparently, there's some scams going on. What can you tell us?
Well, there are, and they're not unusual, but right now, especially as hardworking Americans are filing their tax returns, scams are abundant. And one thing to know is typically the IRS is never going to email you, they're not going to call you, they're not going to text you. If there's any kind of a problem, they will only send it to you through U.S. mail. And so one thing is just to be vigilant and be aware. For example, if you get an email, this is one of the biggest scams right now, Rich, that basically says, hey, there's something missing on your tax return. We need you to confirm this. And by the way, give us your bank account information so we can deposit your return. That is almost a dead giveaway that they're about to steal access to your bank account. So right now, be vigilant is the name of the game.
When you talk about being vigilant, vigilant of what, where, how, what's the best advice we can give our listeners?
Well, especially for people who may be vulnerable, let's say they're older or technology may be more of a challenge to them. If you're in doubt and something doesn't look right, then pause. That's really the best defense you've got, because what happens is these scammers will try to isolate you and pressure you into doing things. For example, one of the biggest scams right now, Rich, and it's really catching a lot of people by surprise, is the phone call you get out of the blue that says, hey, you have a behind-the-scenes tax issue, and you're behind on it. If you don't take care of this, we're going to send an agent out there. We're going to report you. We're going to cause you to pay a steep penalty. And all of that causes people to panic and say, okay, what do I need to do to take care of this? And suddenly they can say, you know what, send us a gift card, send us your bank account information to debit things. So if something doesn't seem right, just slow down and don't feel like you're pressured into making a really bad and costly decision.
Very good advice from Derrick Kinney. Now, Derrick Kinney, I think a lot of people, they get, I guess, apprehensive. They get a little bit nervous when it's tax time. And not because they, they want to do something wrong on their taxes, but because they know that it's so easy to make mistakes. What's some of the advice that you would give to people that are listening that are really dealing with, a high dose of anxiety during this time of year?
Very common, first of all. And, typically filing your taxes is not a joyous moment for most people's lives, Rich. It's typically something they put off and they don't want to do it. But what I would tell you is don't approach your taxes as though one mistake will lead you to prison. That's what most people feel like. That if I make one error, I might as well put on the orange jumpsuit today. And that's not the case. And so you want to make sure that, if you're not confident filling out your tax forms, there's lots of free resources available, or even going online and having a resource there, or having a CPA help you, especially if you own a business. What I always tell people is don't step over the dollars to pick up pennies, for goodness sakes. You want to make sure if you need to spend a little bit of money to save a little bit of money on your taxes, that's the best way to go. But again, if you're feeling nervous, anxious, worried, Rich, you want to make sure you have somebody else who's more skilled in that. Make sure they help you get every possible return and income coming back to you, because you want to pay your fair share, but not a penny more, as I like to say.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Derrick Kinney, tell us a little bit about your latest project. I know you've got a lot going on. Talk to us.
Well, one of the things I feel really burdened about right now, I built one of, many would consider one of the nation's top financial planning businesses. I sold it a couple years ago, and the reason I sold it, Rich, was I began to see a lot of hardworking, middle-class Americans who often go into jobs they don't really like or feel like they're underpaid, and they wanted to get a pathway to become millionaires. But they're often sold this line that says only a select few have access to the secrets of how to become a millionaire. I wanted to democratize that. And especially right now with Trump coming in, there's just this new energy. I think we'd agree on that. There's this sense of hope and optimism. And I want to make sure that people, especially over the next 4 years, also feel that optimism with their finances. And so we put together this 5-step plan. I call it the Millionaire Money Map, and we make it available. Anyone can become a millionaire.com. But the goal is just a step-by-step game plan. Just like you were taking a trip with your family, you know how you're going to get there and where you want to go. The same with your money. And once we give people that confidence and a plan, we find they really make progress toward retirement, and they feel more confident in making decisions. But going from middle class to millionaire is my number one passion right now.
You know, I recently read an article in Fortune about a financial guru that said that he can 100% tell who will remain a member of the middle class just by looking at the cars they drive. And really alluding to, you know, people taking on too much debt. If your car is really nice, there's a good chance that you're not going to be able to use that same money to invest in real estate. And I think there's some truth to that. But what's your thought on a statement like that?
I think it's interesting. Obviously, it's case by case, but I often ask myself, okay, Derrick, if I came across, say, $5,000, what would I do with it? And it's a question that you can ask yourself as well, all of our listeners, and it gives you a sense of what your motivation is when it comes to money. So for me, I would rather actually take the $5,000 and invest it to give me a chance to make even more money. I wouldn't buy the new watch or the computer or the camera, that kind of thing. And so I think right now, even with small purchases, when you can say, look, if I have a choice to take this dollar and put it into an asset or a liability, I'm going to choose the asset. And one way to look at this also, Rich, would be, look, if you're about to get a $1,000 tax refund right now, it's important to have a plan ahead of time before the money hits your bank account, because without a plan, that money has a mind of its own. It will go a wide variety of places. And what I tell people, and this might be controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway, of the $1,000, take about $100 or $200 of that and invest it in yourself. Buy a course, buy a book, read something to help you increase your knowledge in your current job to get paid more.
Personal development.
Side hustle, etc.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think personal development's important, and both mentally and physically, right? I mean, I joined a gym a couple of years ago. Very good idea. I don't always like it, but it's paid off. Right? You know, I feel more fit. I look more fit. So I get it. I do. And there was an app. I can't plug them because, you know, maybe they'll be a sponsor one day. But it's this app where you can listen to books, a bunch of books. But it's shortened versions of these books. And, you know, kind of whet your appetite to see if you want to go buy the full audiobook. And I love it. You know, it's 8 or 9 minutes or something like that. It shrinks everything down, gives you, you know, a synopsis of the book. But very, very good stuff. Derrick Kinney, I want to pull on that thread a little bit more with you when we come back. Stick with me. Folks, we're going to come back with Derrick Kinney, and we're going to talk about what do you do if you get a Doge dividend check for $5,000 from Donald Trump and Elon Musk and the rest of the Doge team. So let's find out what to do with that money. Keep it locked right here. It's Rich Valdez coming right back with Derrick Kinney.
Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
I just have to thank you for doing what you do every night and opening up that mic and hearing from Americans, letting them express their opinions, and really giving people a voice. So God bless you for what you're doing, my friend.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Now, President Trump says he likes the idea of giving some of the savings from Doge back to Americans as kind of a dividend. Would you support that?
Listen, he's just telling a lie. He's not the one that had anything to do with the $1,200 refunds that people had during the midst of COVID. That was done by a Democratic House and Democratic Senate. Right now, what they're going to do is say, hey, we want to give you a refund, but Congress won't let us, because they already know that there's just no money for that. The only reason that those refunds came before was because we were living in different times. This was a time in which hopefully we won't ever go through again. We had a once in a lifetime pandemic. The bad part is that I don't know if it's once in a lifetime, because we know that Ebola, unfortunately, was detected right here in New York here recently. And if we continue down this road of getting rid of scientists or deciding that we don't want to rely on experts as it relates to what they're telling us to do, or we don't want to deal with vaccines and medicine in this country, then we may be facing not only our next pandemic, but our next 2, 3, or 4 pandemics because of their incompetence. So no, we are not in the business of giving out money. And honestly, I don't know what $5,000 will do for you.
I don't know what $5,000 will do for you. Listen, Jasmine Crockett, I love to hear this woman speak, because she is always, I think she gives better stuff to react to than AOC, all out crazy. Now, what will $5,000 do for you? I can tell you, look, if you're a spender, which I can be, I'm going to Hawaii. If I'm a saver, I'm saving, and I'm going to buy myself a condo somewhere that I could rent out and do Airbnb. Or maybe I invest it, right? There's all different angles you could take on this, but $5,000 goes a long way still, in my opinion, my very humble opinion. But let's bring in the pros, right? Because Derrick Kinney, who is America's financial consultant, he has some thoughts on this, and he's on with us. Derrick Kinney, if you get a $5,000 Doge dividend tax refund or whatnot, what do you do with it?
Rich, I'm going to buy the coolest karaoke set I've ever bought. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to live large.
That sounds like fun. My kid is at karaoke tonight. So funny you say that. So, I think going to what you said before, some people are going to do fun things. Some people are going to make investments. But if you were going to make an investment, what would you invest it in?
Well, first of all, and this may sound like a fortune cookie answer, but you want to look at how do I invest this in myself and have something to show for it. Let me tell you a quick story. So many, many years ago, I had one of my favorite clients pass away. And literally, Rich, before the funeral, her son was chomping at the bit to say, when can I get my inheritance to buy a new truck? And what that told me was, here's somebody that was taking essentially pennies from heaven. Mom had worked super hard, and now he wanted to buy a truck that's going to depreciate the moment he drives it off the lot.
Yeah.
So what I would tell people is, look, to your point, $5,000 to some people is not much. To most Americans, it's a lot of money. And that can actually be parlayed into quite a bit of money. So what I would tell people is, look, first of all, you want to make sure you have something to show for it 12 months from now. And how to do that would be whatever is your highest financial pain point, the highest credit card bill, the student loan, whatever the interest rate is that's the highest, you want to put half of it toward that. And you want to make sure that you just nail that debt down as fast as possible. Then, and this may sound kind of crazy to some people, I think it's always wise to give some of it away to help other people's lives. The moment you begin to give, you feel better about your own situation. And then you want to look at, look, let's take a little bit of it for fun. Like you said, maybe you go to Hawaii, maybe you do a trip, because what we find is there's this whole retail therapy concept that's really real, and that is, if you don't have any fun in life and you only live on rice and beans and make your own coffee and only do the things that act like you're poor, typically you tend to binge financially and you put yourself in a worse spot. So if you can treat yourself to some things, but also then invest some back in yourself. You hear me talk about this a lot, but listen, if you don't invest in yourself, nobody else will. That's how I would invest the $5,000, and hopefully a year from now, that's worth maybe $10,000.
Where would you put it?
Well, one thing I like right now, you think about what Trump is doing, you think about the overall economy. I love, love, love simplicity. I would drop it into the S&P 500 index. So think about this. as you and I are talking right now, how much time would it take for you and I to buy 500 individual stocks? It would take a long time. But with one trade, you can put it into one simple index. It's typically SPY if you're tracking that on your phone. And it's all the best, biggest blue chip companies in America. So think about this. The smartest, brightest men and women who are heavily incentivized to make their companies grow for doing nothing, you get the benefit from that. And most mutual fund managers, this is shocking to me, about 90% of all professional fund managers don't even exceed the S&P 500. So this is like the cheat code for middle-class investors. Simply buy the S&P and let it ride for you and make money for you.
Outstanding advice. Now, what other places do you recommend? What's, I guess, your top 3 choices?
Well, I like the S&P because it's the biggest blue chip companies out there. But I got to tell you, Rich, I also like technology. I think we'd agree artificial intelligence is not going away. It's only going to get firmer and firmer. So I would add money to, there's an index called the NASDAQ. When people typically report on the news at night, they talk about the Dow and the S&P and then the NASDAQ. And the NASDAQ is nestled all these, NVIDIA and Apple and Google and Facebook, all the darlings out there, kind of big tech, but also the cutting edge technology. Putting some money there can be very, very attractive. Now, this next one, though, I would actually put it a little bit, just a hair, into Bitcoin and Ethereum. You're going to have a nice story to tell at a cocktail party. You're going to sound real intelligent. But also, one thing I really like, and I know it's kind of crazy, I still like these weight loss drugs, Rich. I got to tell you, I think we're going to have wider and wider acceptance. Novo Nordisk, there's a couple other companies out there. So I think having money diversified with the core of it, in the S&P, a little bit in the NASDAQ, and in some of these other areas, that can be a recipe for long-term success. Doesn't mean it's not going to go down, but long-term you should do pretty well.
Now, what about, I think crypto's a good idea just because it seems to do really well, as long as it's the right crypto. Have you heard about this XRP?
No, to be candid with you. Tell me about XRP.
I don't know a ton about it either. Somebody recommended it to me the other day and said it's a new version of blockchain that's going to be even better, and it's crypto related. And I said, no, let me do some homework on that. So I figured I'd throw it out there. But you talked about crypto. You talked about treating yourself well. What do you think about treasuries, T-bonds?
Well, with any type of portfolio, having some stability and predictability can be very, very important. Now, one thing, and this is a big mistake many investors make, Rich, they're often told that, well, the older you get, the more conservative you should be. And what I found in running one of the largest practices in the country was it's all based on your risk tolerance, not on your age. We would have people in their 70s or 80s that they wanted to be aggressive and they wanted to have money in things like the S&P because they believed in the economy. But for some people, treasuries can be that what we like to call in the business this alternative investment class where it's not really subject to the volatility of the market. Typically, it's based on the claims paying ability of the government, which in some cases that can be kind of suspect, but nonetheless, it provides some stability and predictability. So treasuries in the right places can be a great place to go, especially right now. Rates are not too bad. But again, you're not going to get rich in treasuries. Typically, treasuries are more, how do I not lose money as opposed to how do I not make a lot more money?
Really well put. Derrick Kinney, let everybody know how they find you, how they keep up to speed with the great work that you do.
Yeah, thanks, Rich. It's always great to be with you, and I love what you do, and you're making such a big impact. But for people to reach me, we have a free resource for people that might feel like they're a bit underpaid. It's a way to help them get the raise they want. They can go to gettheraiseyouwant.com, gettheraiseyouwant.com. You can also follow us on Instagram at Derrick Kinney. I know you and I trade the comments quite a bit, and I see you pumping iron there.
Yes, sir.
At the gym with the purple. You are looking good, my friend. Keep it up.
Thanks, brother. I do that to motivate myself, to remind myself to keep going, because it's not easy. Folks, Derrick Kinney, good man. Check him out online and check out the work he's doing. Derrick Kinney, thanks for being with us, brother.
My pleasure. Thank you, Rich.
You bet. And amigos, we continue straight ahead with your calls and more. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
And I tell you, Rich, people like you during the dark days of the 21, 22, 23, where you were a voice of light and strength to a lot of us.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue with you, the American people. Open phones across America, 833-4VALDEZ. Let's go to Joe, Salem, Arkansas, KSAR. Go right ahead.
Rich, the lady you just had on, she mentioned policy of three things that could be the problem, communications and something else. She is right. Pride goeth before a fall, and common sense is uncommon these days, I say. Me and my buddy that's a crop duster, we both agree that they got to get the military out of commercial airports. Having unnecessary flights, as in exercises, can be done in private airfields or military or even in just lay people's fields. You got vertical traffic up and down and then horizontal parallel runways, and like she said, that jet was doing just fine, would have landed very safely like that most of them do. But I'm going to tell you something, farmers and ranchers, and I had this problem with my cattle. I put a couple roundup horses in there with them for pasture. That it's built into them to want to run cattle, chase cattle and stuff, and they don't go together, so you separate them. So why don't they separate? I rode a Cessna and a Airvac chopper, and they're death traps, if you ask me, them small planes and helicopters. But the policy is the problem. Why don't they just separate them? I hope Pete does that. All exercises, not in commercial civil airfields. What do you think?
You know, I think it's a compelling case that you make. I really don't know enough about all of that, but it seems like it makes sense to me. I think part of the issue here was I don't even know if it took off from the same place. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But there's so many military installations right around there that it's kind of like, they all got to go up in the air. And I think it's like she alluded to, it's a communication issue, as well as maybe having an extra trainer on board to cover, the left and the right side of the helicopter. So it might have been a personnel issue, a manpower issue. But on its face, it sounds like it makes sense to me. I wish I knew more about it. This is why I have her as my translator. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate you, brother. Godspeed to you. And, one of the things that I think is hopefully, right, one of the things that we take away from this as a learning experience is being able to look at things and improve, right? Improve our efficiency so that we don't lose more lives for whatever lack of awareness, discrepancy with the altimeter, a lack of communication or a lapse in communication, a number of things, like she said, that went wrong here. And I think that's what we need to do. Make sure that we don't mess up on a bunch of different things. And when we know that if 3 or 4 things go haywire, then we have to do a better job at making sure that those 3 or 4 things are at 100% before we take off, before we even attempt to do what we're doing, whether it's flying a plane or flying a helicopter or whatever. So that's my thinking. And I don't know how much I know about that, but I do know nobody wants a commercial airline to crash and everybody on board to die. Nobody wants a military chopper to take off and crash and for everybody on board to die. if there's anything we can do to avoid this stuff, whether it's a policy change or, even a change in whatever we can do, right? I think we want to make the reasonable effort towards making it right. I don't know if that's altruistic or me being a wishy-washy pie in the sky kind of guy, but, I was at CPAC today, and I talked to a guy who listened to the show. He's like, hey, my name is, Chris, blah, blah, blah. I said, nice meeting you. And, we were talking about the show, and he was like, he enjoyed the show. And somebody brought up this plane crash, and he said, oh, my gosh, I know. He said, I knew 2 of the people on the Black Hawk, and I knew about 6 or 7 people that were on the commercial jet. And I thought to myself, how do you know people on both of these? Obviously, the guy grew up around here because that's, around here. And I said, oh, so you grew up around here? He said, oh, yeah, I grew up around here. And we talked about a bunch of things. But he made it very personal, right? He told me about the people that he knew that were on each of those flights. And it was really, I'm going to use the word touching, right? It was just touching to see how well he knew them. And it put a real human perspective on it that I would say for me wasn't there because I didn't know anybody personally that was involved in that. Just a story, right? And you talk about it, and it generally feels bad just to see people or hear that people are being injured that way, or worse, dying. But when he could put the name with the face and the stories and people he knew, it was really a lot. So I think, we have to make sure we don't lose sight of the human aspect of things, if that makes sense. Folks, keep it locked right here. Your calls and more straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I know the media's in here, and if you have a target, that target's right here. It's not the men and women at the FBI. You've written everything you possibly can about me that's fake, malicious, slanderous, and defamatory. Keep it coming, bring it on, but leave the men and women of the FBI out of it.
That, again, is our new FBI director, Kash Patel, sworn in about 4 or 5 hours ago. And congratulations to Kash Patel. Prior to his recent government service, he was a regular on this program. Hopefully, once he starts doing, radio interviews again, we'll get him back on the show. But I bring up Kash Patel because I think it's literally a new sheriff in town, right? And we're seeing that across so many government agencies. And with the Doge folks and Elon Musk and his magic chainsaw, it's very refreshing to say the least. Let's go to Don, Grass Valley, California, KNCO. Go for it.
Yeah, I've been on your show before, and I want to point out that there's massive federal theft by federal employees in the agency. It's called the Federal Rewards Certifying and Dispersing Office.
How do you know about this?
They stole my rewards. I put in for several rewards, including the reward for Joe DeAngelo, the East Area rapist.
Oh, I see. Reward. So it's like if there's a reward for a crime and you say, hey, I know where so-and-so is, they say, all right, we're going to give you this. And then you're saying, I didn't get my reward for turning in X criminal or this criminal or whatever. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know anything about that. I don't know how they get their hands on it, how that works, but very interesting to say the least. Maybe that's another area that needs to be audited. Somebody call Doge. Somebody get Elon Musk. Somebody get the chainsaw. Don, thank you for your call. Shout out to everybody out in California, KNCO in the building. Our buddy Tony in Montreal, WVMT in Vermont, thank you as well. And everybody that's on hold. Hasta la próxima. God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.